Hello and welcome to this edition of Deeper, and it's great to have Bec joining us once again. Hello Bec, how are you?
Hello, good, thank you. It's great to be here. Great to have a really good opportunity to look deeply into this psalm.
Yeah, we're looking at Psalm 121. Andrea spoke about it on Sunday, and we're just going to go a little bit further with it. And it's a great little psalm, as they all are. I mean, is there a bad psalm? Well, there's certainly some difficult psalms, isn't there? But is there a bad psalm? I don't think so.
This little group of them, though, are really accessible, aren't they? It's been really nice because they're all things that are really reassuring and helpful and nourishing. There's no challenge, really. There's none of those sort of ones where you're like, oh, what do I make of this?
That's right, yeah. I mean, I got a lovely email on Sunday from someone in church who's just saying how much they've enjoyed this series looking at these psalms, because I think it kind of applies to us, doesn't it? You know, we all feel we're on a bit of a journey with something at the moment, and it seems to fit.
Yeah.
So we would love you to read the Psalm 121, as before. Read it in your normal version. If you've got other versions, read it in that as well. Sometimes that's helpful. Read it slowly, try and absorb all the words. So press pause, read Psalm 121, and then restart the video. Okay, so here we are, Psalm 121. It's the second of the Psalms of Ascent. And I don't know about you, Bec, but when I read it as a whole, it feels like it is the start of the journey for them. They're kind of looking ahead, and they can see the hills in the distance and wondering what dangers await them and all that kind of stuff. It's got that kind of feel to it, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely got a setting off vibe, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. So we're going to do it. We're not doing it verse by verse. We're doing because it's kind of in couplets, really, and maybe that's an indication of how it was sung. So we'll do verses 1 and 2, then 3 and 4, then 5 and 6, and 7 and 8. So let's do 1 and 2 first, the very start. So Bec, do you want to kind of kick us off? What do you see here? What stands out for you?
Okay, well, I started off, I was struck by the lifting your eyes up, and I thought they're looking perhaps to the mountains ahead on the road, sort of where they're headed to, but also we talked a little bit about Andrea talked a bit yesterday about lifting your eyes up to the hills, being sort of potentially speaking about some of the other things we might look to for help, or having a connotation around the places where people would have worshipped something other than God. And I was struck a bit by that they're lifting their eyes up, they're doing something, they're not just sort of head down looking at the path, they're lifting their eyes up, but sometimes we have to look a bit deeper, or lift our eyes a little bit further to really get to see where God might be calling us to. But yeah, looking ahead to the journey, looking at both the sort of the goal of their journey, but also the challenges that might come along the way. So that's a start point. And then there's this declaration, isn't there, of my help comes from the Lord. And who is the Lord? Well, he's the maker of heaven and earth. That it reminded me of a phrase from my youth where someone used to say, don't tell God how big your problems are, tell your problems how big your God is. And it's a bit cheesy, but there's something in that, isn't there, of like declaring who God is at the start of the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you can't beat a bit of cheese, can you?
No.
Yeah, it always works. Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to understand what the psalmist is trying to say about the hills, but you know, when you think about it, every film I've ever watched that's involved people on a journey, the danger has always come in the hills and the mountains. Very rarely on the plains and the wide open spaces. You know, the hills and the mountains always seem to be the places of danger. And you know, whether that's Lord of the Rings or anything else like that, every cowboy movie, they always get ambushed in the hills. You know, it's like it always happens there. And there's always something mysterious about kind of hills and mountains. There's a kind of majesty, kind of almost like an otherworldly majesty about them that kind of creates a sense of both awe and anxiety. So there's a kind of They are places of danger, and as Andrew said, they were the places where they were the high places. You see that quite often referred to, especially in the Old Testament. They talk about the high places. They were the local hills, wherever they were the various kind of totems they were put up to various idols and that kind of stuff. So that there is that kind of element to it. But as you say, where do we find help? Our God's the maker of heaven and earth. You can't get bigger than that, can you? No. Whatever danger we face, we've got something bigger. Yeah.
I think the other thing that I saw in that as well was the idea of the mountain, the hills of Jerusalem being far away, but God being present with them on the road as they started. That it was the goal of their journey, that God was with them now as well. Yeah,
that's right. And when you think about describing God as the maker of heaven and earth, you're saying a lot about something about God in that journey. You know, that he's kind of your provider, he's your protector. God knows every aspect of the journey because he created it. You're saying a lot about God there, and I think we might come on to something later about that. Let's move on to verses 3 and 4, because the song now starts to outline some of the dangers. What's the danger here, Bec?
So this first one, I can't remember which way around they go. What's the danger in this first one?
So it's he will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. He who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep.
Right. So the next few verses look at this sort of combination of this is the potential risk, and this is why I'm assured that I can carry on, isn't it? And there's this repeating phrase. I've got the Hebrew this week of this Hebrew word shema. This keeps and preserves. God protects you and keeps you. And for me, that sort of conjured up the idea of a keeper, like a zookeeper, or somebody who's it's both a pastoral and a powerful statement, really. So God cares enough that he's keeping you, but also he's strong enough and big enough to keep you. So that combination of pastoral and powerful.
That's right. And I mean, the Hebrew word is translated in two different ways in the NIV. It says 5 times watches, and then the 6th time it says will keep you. It's exactly the same Hebrew word. And I think that should be reassuring, because if someone's watching over you, it doesn't mean necessarily they're doing anything. It just means they're just keeping an eye on you, which, can be helpful sometimes. But this is a very active watching over. This is both watching over and guarding us. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a nice kind of balance that we need to keep in mind here. And, what God protects us from? Well, it's the kind of the foot slip. If you're on a journey, the worst thing you want is a kind of fractured ankle or a twisted ankle. For us, that would be an inconvenience. For them, it would be the end of the journey, and probably put the rest of the people with them in danger, because they'd probably have to carry them. They'd slow them down. It'd make them more vulnerable to thieves and robbers, all that kind of stuff. It'd be a big deal. And especially if you're going through kind of hills and mountains, it's a bigger deal. So there's an element here of, it sounds a bit simple, doesn't it? You don't want your foot to slip, but that could be not just the end of the journey, but perhaps even the end of someone's life.
Yeah.
And so we have to kind of keep it in that context. And then it goes that God doesn't sleep, which is a relief, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
That God's always alert to the dangers we face.
That's it.
Yeah. And when I read that, I remembered Elijah in that kind of big thing in the 1 Kings 18, where he takes on the prophets of Baal in a competition. It's one of my favorite passages of scripture. And he calls down fire from heaven and on the sacrifice, and the prophets of Baal are trying to do the same, and nothing's happening. And one of the things he mocks them is, he says, is Baal asleep? And the indication is, well, actually, Well, our God doesn't sleep. He's always watching over us. So let's go on to verses 5 and 6. And that says, the Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade by your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. Go on, off you go.
That's it. So, so a couple of things. This idea that, again, repeating that the Lord watches over you, that God is keeping watch over each part of your journey, the daytime and the nighttime, but also that they live under these same conditions. They're not shielded from the day or the night in the natural sense, but that in those things God is with them. And I think that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Particularly when you see these sort of really assured psalms, because sometimes we don't feel assured like that, do we?
No.
Sometimes the realities of our physical life sort of push in on our spiritual assurance. And so I think it's great to remind ourselves that the day and the night still came. It was still dark on the road. They still had to go to sleep trusting really in God's protection.
Yeah, absolutely.
Knowing that the dark night was outside the tent, or whatever it is, the hot sun was going to rise in the morning, but knowing that God was with them in that situation.
Yeah. And the dangers of the sun are obvious, aren't they? The dangers of heat stroke, dehydration, all that kind of stuff. The dangers of the night or the moon, and it says specifically the moon, is a little less clear. It could be around kind of just anxiety about, you have to camp, you're vulnerable to thieves and robbers and wild animals, all that kind of stuff. Andrew mentioned on Sunday around kind of moonstroke, which was new to me. So I looked it up, and it is actually it's a kind of thing, at least for the ancients anyway. And there's been medical research even into whether the phase of the moon affects the numbers of strokes that happen. And it's a bit inconclusive at the moment, but there's kind of, there are links there, and we're always aware of the effect of the sun, but we sometimes forget that the moon actually has an effect, and we only have to look at the tides.
Oh yeah, well I remember as a youth worker, when we would have a particularly wild night, we'd be like, somebody go and check the moon, because it definitely does impact on our sort of mental state and behavior, and you can definitely see it in young people when there's a full moon.
you absolutely can. I think that's where the whole kind of werewolf thing and the full moon stuff comes from, that actually people can behave differently on different phases of the moon. So there's kind of two things there for me. There's in the sun, it's very physical. That is about dehydration, fatigue, weariness, sunstroke, all this kind of thing. The evening is a bit more, it's more about anxiety and emotion and behavior and that kind of stuff. God's going to protect us from all of those things. And I love in the verse that says, He's our shade at our right hand. The shadow of God is cast over us to keep us safe. He's that close to us. He casts a shadow over us, which I really like. Verses 7 and 8. So the last two verses. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore. So the word Shema comes up a bit there, doesn't it?
Oh no, that's my new word for the week.
Yeah.
It's for me, this is the comprehensiveness of this promise, isn't it? That the Lord's going to watch over your coming and your going in the day and the night. There's this over and over again, like repeated sense of, in all things, God will be watching over you. God will be with you, in the highs and the lows as well.
Mm.
It struck me as well that this would be reassuring not only for those who were going on the journey, but perhaps thinking to those they've left behind as well, those back at home, that staying, a sense that God's with them as well as on the journey and at the destination. Yeah.
And it's kind of almost looking ahead to the return journey as well. It's not just about going there, it's about getting back as well. Your coming and your going is both of those things, and God's not just concerned about you getting to worship him. He's about he's concerned about you getting home as well. It's all of those things. And as you say, it does emphasize the completeness of God's protection. It's all of your life.
It also ties in a bit for me with the idea of being, you know, God calls us out to do some things and draws us back, and that in and out rhythm of life, that there's, you know, there's work and there's rest, there's pilgrimage and there's day-to-day life. There's all of this sort of pattern and rhythm to it. That's God's intention for the way that we live.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a big subject that I'd love us to get into, but we wouldn't have time for that. But yeah, absolutely, I agree with that. So let's think about the applications of this and go a little bit wider. So, Bec, what do you think are kind of some of the points that you want to draw out of this for people to apply to their lives?
Okay, so I think, like we said, we're reading these Psalms as people who find ourselves on a journey as well, and I'm struck a bit by what it looks like for us to trust God in our journey. How are we sort of setting ourselves out with a goal, our eyes fixed on something that we're trying to get to, in terms of, you know, an encounter with God, but also finding God in the day-to-day things of the journey, trusting God with the ups and downs of it all, the dangers and the joys of it, really.
That's right. And Andrea kind of brought out on Sunday the whole thing around the different things that we look to for our source of help and strength and encouragement. They're all distractions from God, and potentially don't help us at all because they're only momentary. It is really hard to stay focused on God in the journey and to just trust him in absolutely every part of it. Our whole life is that. Our whole life is a journey from cradle to grave and all that kind of stuff. It's trusting God in every moment of it. I think for me as well, there's a thing here about coming back to God, isn't it? And understanding who God is. He's the maker of heaven and earth. But that doesn't mean he's distant. He's the maker of heaven and earth, but he's also at our right hand, casting a shadow over us. And to me, that's really good theology. And I think the problem with lots of people who try and find their help in other things is that they actually have a bad theology of God. They don't think that in some way God cares for them enough to be concerned about the sometimes mundane issues that we face or the big issues that we face. As Andrew reminds us, you know, on Sunday, that he knows that the number of hairs on our head. That's pretty cool, that, isn't it? You know, I've got a few less hairs than I used to have, but you know, he knows the exact number, and that's we have to get good theology to understand how God's involved in our lives.
Yeah, it's that pastoral and powerful thing, isn't it? That we spoke a few weeks ago about recognizing the greatness of God and having a sort of holy fear of God, but also understanding that pastoral sense of God's character, that he loves and cares for all these different aspects of our lives.
Right. And the moment we get drawn into just one of those things, we are warping our image of God, and he's no longer the God of Scripture, and we need to bring it all together. I think there's something here for me as well about dealing with fear, because this is all about fear, really. It doesn't mention the word fear, but it's all about the anxieties and the fears of the journey. And the song is helping the pilgrims deal with that. And we have to deal with fear. Fear should have no part of a Christian's life. And this last 18 months, you know, has been a difficult time for everyone. We've all had fears and anxieties. We shouldn't just live with them. We should try and deal with them. And I think sometimes having a good image of God helps with that. Anything else you want to bring out as an application point?
No, I think that sort of
great
upon most of what I'd.
Okay, so let's get into some questions then, and give you something to talk about with others in your missional community, or for you to reflect on your own. So let's go a little bit further with some questions for you to consider. Bec, do you want to go first?
Okay. So there's loads of imagery in this psalm. There's the day and the night, there's mountains, and there's sort of lots of things about, our feet slipping. So which of the images that's used in the psalm most speaks to you, and why do you think that might be?
Great, good question. So my question following on from that then would be, what stops us from turning to God in times of stress and anxiety?
So then moving on from that, or further following on from that, what would it look like if you lived your life as if God was keeping you and watching over you? And maybe think about what are some of the struggles that you would let go of, or the things that you're striving for that you could let go of if you trusted God like that.
Yeah, that second half of the question is very good. And so in the midst of struggles, I mean, this is the practical bit then, following on from that question. How do we keep our eyes fixed on God? How do we make sure that He's our source of help and we're not going elsewhere? So what do we do to keep our eyes fixed on God when faced with stress or danger or anxiety? Great. Bec, always good to have a chat with you about this. And I hope that you've enjoyed this session. Do please use these questions in your missional communities or on your own. Stay safe. We'll be with you again on Sunday and next Tuesday. So take care and goodbye.
See ya.